So I'd like to go ahead and read an excerpt from Moonbeams of Mahamudra. This mind has the capacity to confuse us, to delude us, to lead us astray, and to corrupt us. It can even send us over the edge into madness. Mind also has the capacity to take us into enlightenment and to reveal aspects of our consciousness that has remained totally foreign to us. We can become confused, depraved, lost beings, a state normally referred to as samsaric existence in Buddhism, or we can become a Buddha, an enlightened being, an awakened one. Enlightenment is not given to us as a gift. We attain enlightenment by realizing the different aspects of ourselves until nothing remains hidden. We often talk about the fact that we do not understand other people and we think that other people do not understand us. But the truth is that we do not even understand ourselves. Our levels of delusion and confusion may remain hidden from ourselves, but they continue to influence the way we think about the world and the way that we interact with other people. We cannot become enlightened while we remain ignorant of the workings of our own minds. Where does all this confusion and delusion come from? We assume that our senses are neutral media that we use only to apprehend the world, that everything that we see, hear, smell, and taste and touch is unadulterated. We do not have this kind of direct perception of the world. The truth is that we are constantly constructing the world that we inhabit. Our sensory perceptions are connected to our consciousness. We have 5 senses and 5 sense consciousness, and these consciousnesses have to be selective. If there were no consciousness attending to each of our senses, we would be completely overwhelmed by our sensory imperfections. We cannot process everything we hear, see, smell, touch, and taste. We have a central organizing consciousness that manages these 5 sense consciousness, and all 6 of these are connected to the ego consciousness. We do not see things or have certain experiences. We constantly think in terms of I, me, and mine. We automatically think, I saw this, I heard that, I experienced this, I hated that, I enjoyed this, and so on. All of our experiences are assimilated by ego consciousness in this way. In addition, nothing that we experience goes to waste. Every experience leaves an impression on the mind, and those impressions are stored within an underlying level of mind called the storehouse consciousness. Those stored impressions give rise to certain proclivities and tendencies until we become so habituated to the ways we react to things that we are completely unaware of what is going on. Certain emotional experiences become so much a part of our psychological makeup that we do not even realize they are there. That is how karmic cause and effect comes into being. That is how the mind becomes deluded according to Mahamudra teachings. As practitioners, we need to be more attentive to the ways that our minds function on a sensory level, to the ways that we organize and interpret our sensory impressions, to the kinds of reactions we have, and how we relate to this to a sense of self. Our ego is so fragile, it sees everything we experience as either friendly or threatening. We must learn to be more aware of the ways our ego functions in terms of how it reacts to the world and how it sees itself within the process. We learn to become familiar with these psychological tendencies through meditation practice. Mahamudra meditation gives us the ability to recognize our mental habits and the kinds of thoughts that persist within our minds. We do not all think alike. Every individual has different thoughts and emotions. We all have our themes and tendencies and fixate on certain thoughts and emotions that we either favor or revile. We will gradually learn to become more awake through this process of meditation. Instead of trying to understand ultimate reality or ultimate truth, we have a lot of obsessions like that. We simply learn to become more familiar with ourselves. As a result, all of our anxieties, fears, angers, and frustrations will subside. When we know our own minds, we will begin to understand ultimate reality. But without that self understanding, ultimate reality will just be a version of whatever we believe it to be. We cannot have the experience of ultimate reality without self understanding. As you proceed with Mahamudra meditation, you will start to gain insight in a more positive aspect of your mind, an aspect that is spiritual, pure, uncorrupted, and incorruptible. You may be confused and bewildered. You may be the victim of your own conflicting emotions. But when you understand more about your mind, you will begin to see that your mind is intrinsically pure. That is called our true nature. Our ignorance, jealousy, pride, greed, lust, anger, and so on have no power to corrupt our spiritual nature. When you begin to understand that, you will develop a real sense of confidence. This confidence is not based on the manufactured sense of self that comes from your ego identity. It is a real form of confidence, a transcendental confidence that does not have its basis in any one thing. This confidence is being itself, because to dwell in our own spiritual being is the same as confidence. In other words, we do not have confidence. We do not acquire confidence if we are confident. Confidence is simply being in our spiritual state. We have become alienated from this state as a result of all kinds of misunderstandings and delusions. Nonetheless, even though we have become alienated from our spiritual state, we have never lost it. We can never lose it. The state of enlightenment is attainable for that reason. If we had no enlightened nature within ourselves, it would require really drastic measures to change us from an ignorant, confused, and bewildered person into a liberated, awake, and enlightened being. As the Mahamudra teachings say, you cannot extract oil from coal. If we did not have an inherently spiritual nature, our aspirations to enlightenment would just be another fantasy or dream. We would not have what it takes to secure enlightenment. Ignorance cannot lead to enlightenment, but enlightenment can overcome ignorance. If our authentic and intrinsic nature is spiritual and uncorrupted, and that it is there to be discovered, then enlightenment is not a fantasy. It is tangible and a reachable reality. Mahamudra meditation puts us in touch with our spiritual beings. You will never stop thinking, I am just someone who gets angry, jealous, resentful, bitter, despondent, passionate, and worked up about things. You will begin to feel ease, mental clarity, sharpness, and pure presence because you are becoming totally alert and aware. Normally, even when we think we are conscious, we are not aware at all. The teachings say that we are not even conscious. For example, when you react with anger to someone or something, you may be able to catch yourself after the fact and recognize your reaction, but during the actual experience, you were completely carried away by the current of emotion. We cannot say that we are fully present within our experiences or fully conscious of them. Mahamudra meditation teaches us to dwell within our own spiritual well-beings so that all of our problems that we create in our life has less of an impact. According to the teachings, the real source of our mental disturbances is not having confidence. We usually feel so vulnerable. We always are on the defensive. Our behavior is always so protective. and filled with so much fear and anxiety, we generate all kinds of emotional responses to protect ourselves. If we can learn to be at ease with ourselves, if we can find comfort and ease in the spiritual well being within ourselves, nothing will overwhelm or threaten us. We will deal with whatever life situations present themselves. We gain access to the spiritual energy. When we feel it enriched, we can overcome the poverty mentality that is associated with the samsaric mind, which makes us feel confined, constricted, and unable to express ourselves, unable to even be ourselves. Technique takes pride of place in traditional meditation approaches, but that is of much less importance in Mahamudra. Mahamudra does use some meditative techniques, but very little. Even when techniques are applied, they're only meant to be used when needed. They are not really relied upon. We are trying to transcend our ordinary states of consciousness by approaching our meditation practice in a natural way, without trying too hard and without exerting ourselves too much. We exert ourselves in meditative techniques and practices when we are somehow uncomfortable with ourselves. When we want to overcome some basic level of corruption or disease, Mahamudra meditation is about releasing our confusions, delusions, and mental obscurations and conflicting emotions. Because when disturbing thoughts and emotions are allowed to arise and dissipate without interference or fixation, they are naturally self-liberated. Self-liberation, when you stop deliberately trying to create a particular state of mind and can just be with whatever arises. Everything can be self-liberated if you're able to maintain your awareness. You can enter into your own natural authentic state where suffering is unknown and where delusions have no hold. You can enter into a state even while you are in a state of delusion. By going past the state of delusion and remaining in your natural state, you can overcome delusions and suffering. You don't have to abandon your negative thoughts and emotions and cultivate positive ones. You don't have to purify your disturbing thoughts and emotions, and you don't have to transform a negative thought into a positive one. By just letting our thoughts and emotions be, they will dissipate on their own accord. This is how we come in touch with our authentic condition. Our true nature is not about dividing ourselves up and saying, that is my false self and that is my true self. We have to see all of our experiences through our emotions as ourselves and not to feel so bad because we have these negative things inside of us. We will become less self-divided in that way. We cannot even think of wisdom if we are trying to reject conflicting emotions. Wisdom comes from being able to deal with and accept and incorporate these emotions, not from making a huge effort to reject them or deny its existence. Our conflicting emotions will then be self-liberated into wisdom. Wisdom and conflicting emotions are a mutual dialogue. Mahamudra meditation is a way to remain in our own natural state so that our thoughts and emotions are naturally self-liberated into wisdom. I really hope that I brought some sort of wisdom to my listeners. Thank you all for listening in, and I'll see you in the next recording. Bye-bye.